Caveman goes to berry bush. Yesterday, 10 berries cost 1 rock. Today, 10 berries cost 2 rocks. Caveman did nothing wrong. Caveman just got poorer. That is inflation. And it is happening to everyone right now. Not just Caveman. But here's the thing most people don't get. Inflation is not just prices going up. It is money becoming worth less. And there is a big difference between those two things. By the end of this video, Caveman will have broken down exactly what inflation is, what causes it, how the people in charge try to stop it, and what it actually does to regular people's lives. No big words, no confusing charts. Just Caveman, a pile of berries, and the truth. Let's get into it. Number 1. What inflation actually is. Okay, so Caveman has been hunting mammoths. Caveman is very good at hunting mammoths. Caveman trades 1 mammoth tusk for 20 berries. That is the deal. That is the price. But then one day, Caveman brings in a tusk. And the berry person says it now costs 2 tusks for 20 berries. Caveman is confused. Same berries, same tusk. But now Caveman needs to give more to get the same thing. That is inflation in its most simple form. According to the International Monetary Fund, inflation is the rate at which prices for goods and services increase over a period of time, usually measured over a year. When prices go up, each unit of money, each rock, each dollar, buys fewer things than it did before. That is what economists call a loss of purchasing power. Think of it this way. Caveman had 10 rocks. Last year, those 10 rocks could buy him a warm fur, some dried meat, and a new flint. This year, same 10 rocks, but now they only cover the fur. The dried meat and the flint, gone. Too expensive. The money did not disappear, but the money got weaker. According to data tracked through the Consumer Price Index, which is basically the government's grocery list that they check every month, the United States experienced an inflation rate of around 8% in 2022, which was the highest it had been since the 1980s. As of 2024, that rate had come down to about 2.9%, according to Everything Policy. That is closer to normal, but Caveman's berries still cost more than they used to. Prices that go up rarely come all the way back down. Number 2, there is more than one kind of inflation. Caveman thought there was only one kind of bad. Turns out there are 2. The first kind is called demand pull inflation. This is when too many people want the same thing at the same time, and there is not enough of it to go around. So the price goes up. Here is a Caveman example. There is one watering hole in the valley. Usually 20 cavemen share it. Everyone gets water. Life is good. But then, one day, 50 new cavemen show up from the other side of the mountain. Now there are 70 cavemen fighting over the same water. So the tribe elder in charge of the water says, "You want some? Now it costs 3 rocks instead of 1. That is demand pull inflation. More people chasing the same amount of stuff. This is actually what happened after the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the Brookings Institution, during the pandemic, people could not spend money on travel or going out. So that money piled up. Then when everything reopened, everyone rushed to buy stuff at the same time. All that pent-up demand hit at once, and prices shot up. The second kind is called cost-push inflation. This one is sneakier. Instead of the buyers driving prices up, it is the sellers who push prices up, because it costs them more to make the thing in the first place. Caveman example. Caveman makes spears to trade. He needs 3 materials, a stick, a rock, and a vine to tie them together. But then a flood wipes out the vine forest. Now vines are rare. Now vines are expensive. So the spear costs more to make. So Caveman charges more for the spear. Not because Caveman is greedy, just because the inputs got more expensive. According to the Reserve Bank of Australia's explanation of inflation causes, which covers the same mechanics as the US economy, When production costs rise, businesses produce less and charge more. That gets passed on to the buyer. Every single time. A real-world example of this. When oil prices go up, almost everything gets more expensive. Because oil is used to ship products, to make plastic, to run factories. It is a ripple effect. One cost goes up, and it pushes dozens of other prices with it. Number 3. Where does all that extra money come from? Caveman has a question. If money gets weaker, who made it weaker? Who is responsible? Good question, Caveman. One of the biggest causes of inflation is the government printing more money, or increasing what economists call the money supply. Here is why that matters. Imagine there are only 100 rocks in the whole world, and there are 100 berries for sale. So one rock buys one berry. Simple, fair. But then someone makes 100 more rocks and hands them out. Now there are 200 rocks, but still only 100 berries. So now it takes 2 rocks to buy 1 berry. The berries didn't change. The berries don't even know what happened. But your rocks just got cut in half in terms of what they can do. According to a Stanford economist quoted in a piece from Stanford's Graduate School of Business, the massive inflation spike after COVID was largely caused by the US government sending out roughly $5 trillion in stimulus spending between 2021 and 2023. All that new money entered the economy, and people tried to spend it. But the amount of goods available didn't double to match it, so prices went up to balance things out. This is not a small amount of money. $5 trillion is a number so big Caveman cannot even grunt it properly. That is like if every single person in the United States got handed around $15,000 all at once, and then everyone went shopping at the same time. Prices were going to go up. It was basically guaranteed. Number 4. What does inflation actually do to real people? Okay, so Caveman now knows what inflation is and where it comes from. But Caveman wants to know, why does it hurt so much? Here is the honest answer. Inflation does not hurt everyone the same way. According to the IMF, inflation is really damaging to people who earn a fixed income or who keep their money sitting still. If Caveman's employer pays in the same number of rocks every moon cycle, but the price of everything goes up, then Caveman's rocks don't go as far. Caveman didn't get a pay cut officially, but in practice, Caveman got a pay cut. Now here is the twist. Some people actually benefit from inflation. If Caveman borrowed a bunch of rocks to build a bigger cave and agreed to pay back a set amount every month, inflation is actually Caveman's friend, because the rocks he borrowed were worth more back then than the rocks he is paying back now. He is paying back weaker money. His debt shrinks in real terms while his wages might be going up with inflation. But savings? Savings get destroyed by inflation. If Caveman has 500 rocks buried under a tree and does nothing with them for 10 years, those rocks will buy a lot less in 10 years than they do today. Just from sitting there, doing nothing, getting weaker. That is one of the most important things to understand about inflation. Keeping cash does nothing for you when inflation is running. Caveman learned that the hard way. There is also a thing called hyperinflation. That is when inflation goes completely off the rails. Not 2% or 8%, but hundreds or thousands of percent. Caveman does not need to worry about that in the US right now. But countries like Zimbabwe and Venezuela experienced it in recent history, and it is devastating. Prices change so fast that people's savings become worthless almost overnight. Number 5. How does anyone stop inflation? Caveman wants to fix this. Caveman is ready to swing club at inflation. Here is the thing though. You cannot club inflation directly. Inflation is not a thing you can touch. But there are tools that work. The main one is interest rates. This is the Federal Reserve's job, which is basically the most powerful money club in America. The Federal Reserve, also called the Fed, does not set prices on berries or fur or anything like that. But it does control how expensive it is to borrow money. When the Fed raises interest rates, borrowing becomes more expensive. Taking out a loan for a house costs more. Getting a car loan costs more. Businesses think twice before borrowing to expand. So people spend less. And when people spend less, demand goes down. And when demand goes down, prices stop rising as fast. According to everything policy, that is exactly what happened after inflation peaked in 2022. The Federal Reserve raised interest rates rapidly, to levels not seen since the 1990s, according to Stanford's analysis. And over time, it cooled prices down. By September 2024, inflation had moderated to around 2.4%, according to data from the Peter G. Peterson Foundation. But here is the catch. Raising interest rates is not free. When it costs more to borrow money, businesses also slow down hiring. People lose jobs. The economy gets sluggish. So the Fed is always walking a tightrope. Cool things down enough to stop inflation, but not so hard that everything crashes. When they get it right, economists call it a soft landing. According to Brookings, the U.S. actually pulled off something close to a soft landing coming out of the 2022 inflation spike. Inflation came down while unemployment stayed historically low. Caveman is impressed. Caveman did not think that was possible. Number 6. What should regular people do about inflation? Caveman cannot control interest rates. Caveman cannot stop the government from printing rocks. But Caveman can still make smart moves. The most important thing to understand, cash loses value during inflation. Keeping all your money in a sock under the bed means it is quietly shrinking every year. The math is slow, but it is real. At 3% inflation, money loses about half its purchasing power in roughly 24 years. It just sits there and gets weaker. So what do people do? Generally, people try to put money into things that tend to grow along with inflation. Things like stocks, real estate, or inflation-protected government bonds. These are things that can at least keep pace with rising prices. But here is the most basic version of the advice for Caveman. If everything costs more, and Caveman's paycheck stays the same, Caveman is getting poorer. Not because anything bad happened to Caveman, just because the system moved around him. That awareness alone, knowing that flat income during inflation is a backward slide, is more useful than most things anyone will tell Caveman this year. The solution is not to panic. The solution is to understand what is actually happening and make decisions based on that. Number 7. The thing nobody talks about. A little inflation is actually fine. Caveman is shocked. Inflation can be good. Sort of. In small doses. Most economists, including those at the Federal Reserve, consider an inflation rate of around 2% to be healthy. According to everything policy, negative inflation, which is called deflation when prices drop, can actually be worse for the economy. When prices fall, people delay buying things because they think it will be even cheaper tomorrow. Businesses make less money. They hire fewer people. The economy slows down. A small, predictable level of inflation keeps money moving. It gives businesses reason to invest. It keeps the economy from stalling. The problem is when inflation gets out of control. When it climbs to 8% or higher, it starts hurting more people than it helps. Wages can't keep up. Savings evaporate. Planning for the future becomes very hard because no one knows what things will cost next year. So Caveman does not need to fear all inflation. Caveman just needs to know the difference between a light drizzle and a flood. Number 8. What just happened in America? The short version. Just to bring it all together with something real and recent. Before the pandemic, inflation in the US was cruising around 2% or below for years. Normal. Fine. Boring. Good. Then the pandemic hit. Supply chains got disrupted. Factories slowed down. Shipping got chaotic. Workers were hard to find. At the same time, the government sent out massive amounts of stimulus money to help people survive. That money entered the economy, and people spent it on goods that were harder to get than normal because supply was disrupted. Too much money chasing too few things. Prices exploded! By 2022, inflation hit 8%, a 40-year high according to multiple sources including the Brookings Institution and Everything Policy. The Federal Reserve stepped in and raised interest rates aggressively. It was painful for a while. Mortgages got expensive, but inflation came back down. By 2024, it was around 2.9%. As of early 2025, inflation was measured at 3%, according to the Peter G. Peterson Foundation, slightly above the Fed's 2% target, which means the conversation about interest rates and prices is still very much happening. Caveman watched all of this. Caveman noticed his food bill went up. Caveman noticed his rent got more expensive. Caveman was not imagining things. Caveman was living through one of the biggest inflation events in modern American history. And now, Caveman understands why. Inflation is not magic. It is not random. It is a system. And once you understand how the system works, it stops feeling like something that just happens to you. It starts feeling like something you can actually plan around. Prices go up when demand is too high, or when supply gets hit, or when too much money floods into the economy at once. The people in charge try to slow it down with interest rates. Sometimes they get it right. Sometimes it takes time. But the basics of what is happening are not complicated. Caveman figured it out. So can anyone. With that said, I'll see you on the next video.